As of tonight, I'm sleeping on the roof is my translation of a novel that came out about a year ago by Christian Grøndahl. Its original title is Nat Sover Jeg potet. I'm going to be reading a passage from near the beginning of the novel in which the narrator, who's in his early 60s and who feels that his life is pretty much over, is recollecting falling for a young woman named Anna some 40 years previous. We went for a walk in the university gardens. Our conversation had long risen above the exchange of biographical details. We weren't old enough, in any case, to have much to tell. We spoke instead of books, films, music. She was better read than I, more knowledgeable, and unaffected by the severe pedagogy of the era. We followed the paths between the exotic trees and observed the play of light on the water. She spoke of Omar Khayyam, Paul Celan, Georg Trakl, Anais Nin, Marguerite Duras. I hadn't read any of them and felt ignorant. It didn't help when I tried to bring up Neruda. She hadn't read Marx and wouldn't dream of doing so. She started to laugh. We sat on a bench to watch the parade passing by. Humans, dogs, our own more or less foolish fancies. Some people were broke and some brilliant. Some were getting laid and some had thrown in the towel. And who had guaranteed that any of it would be fair? I inquired about her plans for the future. She closed her eyes in the afternoon sun as if it were the silliest thing she'd heard in a long time. The one thing I knew with any certainty was that I longed to touch her hair, her cheek, her knee. She shaded her eyes with her hand and regarded me for a moment. As far as the future went, she'd been invited to a party that evening in Nuremberg. Did I want to go? Our shadows were ludicrously long on the bike path, the shops closing and the traffic subsiding. It made the city a strange place again to bike behind Anna, her back erect on the rattling bicycle, and her calves brown beneath her dress, which she'd wrapped around the grips of her handlebars to keep it free from the chain. Everywhere she went, it was with an easy, unencumbered curiosity, as though whatever she encountered had nothing to do with her, yet might prove diverting. She used that word indiscriminately, diverting, and in utterly unexpected situations. At that time, I assumed that her woman of the world air must have come from her years in the U.S. Later, she would confide in me that she'd found Boston even more provincial than Copenhagen. She knew our city better than I did. Shortcuts through the tenements on the other side of Ågade and Bispe Engbuen, cramped alleyways that we crossed now in the blue evening. She'd grown up here, while I was still scouring around the residential streets of the suburbs. We cut across Assistens Cemetery, and when we came to the paths between the old graves, she didn't slow down. Suddenly, she braked in front of an iron railing around a family burial plot. A rose bush encircled the sandstone monuments. "There he lies," she said, and bent one of the stems to sniff the petals. "Kierkegaard," she added by way of explanation. "Do you believe in God?" I told her I didn't. "He said it's your duty. That's why we're such sinners." She let go of the rose and smiled, and I wanted to ask her what she meant, but she said she was hungry. We found a small fast food joint on Nuremberg. The streetlights came on outside as we leapt from subject to subject, as if impatient to discover whether there were a limit to what we could talk about. "We're so different," she said merrily. My disappointment was like the cold draft that hit our ankles every time someone opened the door to the garishly lit eatery. I wished that she'd said the opposite. "But you're more open-minded than you seem. You don't think I'm cuckoo anyway. Or do you?" For the first time, I had an inkling of something vulnerable behind her superior facade. I smiled without answering, to torment her a bit. And for the first time, I felt I had the upper hand. We bought some beer in a corner store. There was already a crowd when we got to the beat-up apartment. We never discovered who actually lived there. And apart from a girl whom Anna greeted with a hug, I don't think she knew a soul. Not that we tried to make anyone's acquaintance. The girl Anna had spoken to stood dancing with a guy in a black biker jacket, while Anna and I sat on the floor in a corner. The music was so loud that we had to yell. It was exhausting, bellowing our bon mots to each other at the top of our lungs. It wasn't till the third time she shouted it that I understood she wanted to dance. We kept knocking into other people, and Anna became rather unpopular when she bumped into a guy who was snorting lines from the windowsill. When a slow number came on the stereo, she grabbed me by the waist and pulled me to her. Through a half-open doorway, I glimpsed her friend lying on a bed, necking with the guy in the leather jacket. We were just bodies, I remember thinking as the evening began to unfold. Everything about Anna, her intelligence, her wit and spirit, coruscated, and yet we were just two bodies pressed together. She wrested herself free, grabbed my hand, and led me out of the packed apartment. On our way down the staircase, we passed others on the way up. She stopped on a landing when the light went out and whispered for me to kiss her. Far down in the depth of years, we stand there still. I've lost touch with the person I was then, just as I've lost touch with Anna. Yet there we stand, completely still in the dark, completely unfamiliar to each other, completely close. Language is only at best a depth sounder, and words cannot bridge the distance. But something down there remains beneath the weight of the past. The surprising thing about getting older is that you don't get heavier with the passing years, which is what you imagined when you were waiting for the story to begin. The person you once were would be disappointed with the person you've become. But fortunately, you've forgotten your young self. He stands there on the bottom, watching you shoot up into the air toward the great silvered mirror. He doesn't know the rising sensation of lightness and liberation you feel, and you're not aware of it yourself until you approach the mirror, sucked into the light, and realize that it didn't matter what you became or who.